Hey Bjorn, how did I know you were going to be first? Intuition, I guess. Hey John. Wen stepped out of the office actually, so Mr. Moon, not here yet, not here right now, but he's coming. I think usually he'll be in the office at some point. Okay, guys, we're just going to let a few minutes let people filter in, and then we'll get moving. Islamabad. Well, yeah, Pakistan was interesting. I guess in many aspects is what you would expect, but in many aspects it wasn't at all what you would expect. So I've traveled to quite a good deal of third world countries. So in that respect, and emerging countries, it wasn't scary, John, at all. But what I would say is that, if you've been to any country, almost any country, except for maybe Chile in South America, and you've been to parts of Mexico, maybe, and perhaps even parts of some Southeast Asia countries, and you've been to areas of the city that weren't the best. If you removed, I don't know, the cars, because those would be a dead giveaway, the people, and maybe the signs, because obviously they'd be in the local language, you probably wouldn't be able to tell where you were for the most part. So it was an interesting place. Met a lot of people, talked to a lot of government officials, shook a lot of hands, talked a lot about capital market infrastructure, didn't talk so much about cryptocurrencies, mainly because, well, those are illegal in Pakistan, but talked a lot about tokenization, talked about using blockchain in finance, talked about kind of went around the issue of the fact that they really shouldn't be outlawed, and why they shouldn't be outlawed. Went to a few universities, talked to students. There's a general openness there to push things forward, and it's a country that lacks basic everything, basically anything you can imagine. There's a lack of it, or it simply doesn't exist. And while Pakistan has had some good years in the last 20, 30 years, it's had these pockets where they saw foreign investment, and they saw foreign companies coming into Pakistan, but that's been riddled with problems. So they had good pockets and bad pockets. Unfortunately, the bad pockets were longer than the good pockets. Let's put it that way. There's a lot of potential in Pakistan. There's risk, though, as well, right? There's the risk that the government right now, which is very progressive, in the next 3.5, 4 years, when it changes again, if it changes, that you end up with a government that's not so progressive, and everything you've done kind of goes in the toilet. Not to mention that obviously right now Pakistan being somewhat as somewhat graylisted by FATF, and possibly has a threat to be blacklisted if they don't improve their reporting stand. Don't improve a lot of things, including reporting standards and anti-money laundering and stuff like that. They are working on that, though. We had conversations about that actually with some of the ministers, as well as the governor of Punjab province. So I think that there's for our business, for anybody's business, really, there's lots of potential in Pakistan. It was a first visit. I didn't walk away with an MOU. That absolutely wasn't the reason I went there. The reason I went there was out of curiosity. So I spoke at the conference, met a lot of people, already had a few follow-up phone calls, looking to have many, many more. Probably will end up back there Q1 next year, to see about possibly sandboxing. There's already discussion about sandboxing within the government. We're trying to get on that council right now. We've met some of the lead people on that council, and we're looking to get included in that council. So the next time they meet, we can talk about not only the front end of the capital markets, which is, let's say, CoinMetro, but also the back end of the capital markets, so CSD, settlement, etc. But it was an interesting trip, that's for sure. So what's new on funding? So I was a bit late today because I was actually back and forth with our investor group, finalizing a few details. I expect an email actually while I'm chatting here that comes through with all the KYC information, at least most of the KYC information that we've been waiting for. And then it's really about just finalizing a few small pieces in the investment agreement, just based on some small changes that were made. Nothing to do with amounts, nothing to do with anything major, just small clerical changes. And I think next week, by the end of next week, we will have this thing done and dusted. So yeah, funding that's the news on funding. Let's now that we just went totally off on tangent here. I see Miles is here. Hey, Miles. Let me. I'm sure Miles enjoyed that last bit of news. But how much is it? I think we already mentioned the amount. I don't know. I'm not a superstitious guy. I don't know if mentioning this actually I don't know, makes it mean that it might not come true or something. I don't believe any of that nonsense. Anybody out there believe that? I don't believe that. But right now, the number on paper overall is over 2 million, with the vast majority of that coming into CoinMetro. There is a small amount that's going towards XCM, and there's another amount that's going towards the CSD. However, the majority sits with CoinMetro, so it's in the seven figures. So obviously, we still have a bit to go to get to that 5 that we've been searching for. But this money, the goal of this money that's coming in now is self-sustainability, guys. It's getting to the point where we can sustain ourselves, and then from there, it becomes much easier for us to go out and get the capital we need for licensing. So it's good news. Good news all around. All right, so let's jump into our actual program now that we started off on a tangent here. So. For those of you who've never been here before, my name is Kevin Murcko. I'm CEO here at CoinMetro. I'm sitting in my office, inside of our office. The last couple shows I actually did from one of our meeting rooms. I was lazy today, and it's a bit cold in that meeting room. So it's cold in here too, but less cold. So I'm sitting in my office here in Tallinn, in Estonia. And we have a little agenda we like to follow every Sunday. And that agenda works like this. We cover 10 pieces of market news, usually curated from the last week. This time it's from the last 2 weeks because I missed last week's AMA because fortunately, I guess, unfortunately, I don't know. I was traveling in Pakistan, and let's just say that one thing Pakistan needs to work on is internet coverage. So then from there, after we go over those, I usually comment on each story. It takes about 1 minute each story, sometimes a bit longer, say about 10 minutes there. Then we run into live Q&A. Then we run into Kevin Explains Crypto. It's a little thing where there's a phrase voted on by our elite Telegram group every week, either a phrase or a word that relates to crypto. I just give it a definition. That's it. Try to give it a definition so everybody understands what it means. Then we go into live Q&A, question and answer. That happens here on YouTube. And then time permitting, I hit up some Reddit questions that are over the last 2 weeks this time that were curated on Reddit. So let's get into the news first, and then we'll move on with the show. What do you think? Okay, market news. So from last week, meaning not this week, but the week before this week, that's the definition of last, but anyway. Number 1 on a list of 5 from last week, Bitfinex sparks controversy alleging manipulating 20,000 Bitcoin high price. There was some controversy about. I don't think it was necessarily Bitfinex, but it was more aligned with Tether, one of Bitfinex's sister companies. Look, it's amazing to me when you look at more mature markets, right? You'll see conspiracy theories, but mainly because people simply don't have access to information. So they just make information up that they feel suits the story. Here, you have access to lots of information. You can see money flows. There's an indicator. If anybody's ever traded FX, right? There's an indicator. Don't use this indicator because it sucks. And especially if you don't know how to use it, because it basically pulls information that may or may not be actually accurate. But it's called the money flow index. Right? And it shows you how money flows in and out of the market, but it's a very minimal amount of data, right? In crypto, you have access to every single piece of data you can imagine. Granted, on exchanges, people that hold money on exchanges isn't on chain, or it's grouped into one single account, so you don't get the same level of information, but you still have an exorbitant amount of information. Yet somehow the conspiracy theories in this market tend to be overly produced in terms of comparison to other markets. So look, Bitcoin's price went as high as it did mainly on the back of two things: the ICO bubble and giant pyramid schemes in China. That's it. That's it. There's no other explanation. Now, you can tie that into Tether and you can do whatever you want. But yes, most Bitcoin trading happens against Tether. That's mainly because people want to stay in crypto. People that trade crypto like to stay in crypto, but they also like to have an asset that isn't as volatile to move their funds in and out of, whether or not trading in Bitcoin or any other crypto asset. And that's why Tether is there. But to be honest, I don't see any real evidence that shows that this is true. If you take out the ICO bubble and you take out the 4 billion that was transferred to one single pyramid scheme based out of China, well, Bitcoin price would have never hit 20K. That's the point. Number 2 on the list of 10, crypto exchange DX.exchange controversially shuts down, citing operational costs. Yeah, I remember when these guys came out, everybody was jumping onto our Telegram saying how they were doing things faster and how they were more innovative than us and how they partnered with NASDAQ. Yeah, well, there you go. So look, business is tough, guys. It's not just this business, any business, right? 9 out of 10 businesses usually fail. And out of those 9 out of 10, 8 of those are going to fail because of money. So, we've been pretty open with our situation, how we've been kind of making sure that we've been funded almost, month on month for the past year. That's changing next week, it seems. But look, business is difficult, right? Business is difficult. You need to, sometimes you need to do things you don't want to do. Sometimes you make decisions you don't want to make, and you can't give up. It's really easy to give up, right? I've been in many situations in my life where I just wish where at the time I'm like, oh man, forget it. Like, why should I even deal with this, right? Just throw in the towel. But giving up is easy in the moment, but it's difficult over time. Trust me. If you're the type of person that just gives up, you never get any type of success. Success doesn't come to those who give up. Even people who win the lottery and they're lazy and just sit on their, sit in front of the TV all day. And you know what happens to that money? Well, it goes away as quick as it comes in, right? So, DX Exchange, I think they tried to do a few things. They tried to go around a couple laws. They had this subsidy that was in Cyprus that was regulated. And that they were trying to do these kind of lazy solutions in terms of STOs and tokenization, where they were simply tokenizing rights to underlying asset held by another intermediary. Anyway, we talked about this a lot on these shows over the course. The point is that I've made a couple comments over the years now on the show. I think we've been online more than a year now with these AMAs. That one, crypto exchanges need to diversify their revenue streams. And 2, lazy solutions don't work. In the end, lazy solutions don't work because, people realize, smart people, who are the people that really end up using new innovative services. Everybody may use it at first, but eventually the guys who really start to use it and dig in are the smart guys. And smart guys can figure out instantly that there's really no benefit to buying a tokenized asset where the rights are held by a company that you now have to trust that actually holds the asset that you actually wanted to buy, which actually doesn't disintermediate, doesn't. So, at the end of the day, we're going to see a lot of this. And I've said this a million times, but we're going to see a lot of this. If there's, I don't know how many hundreds of crypto exchanges currently in the market, there will be hundreds less over the next, 0 to 24 months. So, number 3 on the list of 10, Gemini adds automated customer tax reporting. Gemini's in the US. IRS famously sent out a bunch of letters to taxpayers. By the way, I was in the US just recently, and I stopped by my mailbox, and guess what I had? A letter from the IRS. So I can be added to that list of lucky 10,000 that got a letter in the mail from the IRS. A phishing letter, by the way. Anyway, so Gemini's in the US. The US is starting to modernize their tax system in accordance with crypto. Makes sense that they would offer this, though I don't know if this is an advance, actually moving in the right. I mean, it's moving in the right direction in terms of, let's say, compliance. That's for sure. But if you ask most clients whether they'd rather have no tax reporting or automated tax reporting, you can imagine which side of the fence most people would be on. I do think, though, that Gemini did this because they have a lot of U.S. clients, and they probably have pressure on them as well from the IRS. And if not from the IRS, from other regulatory bodies, maybe even from New York State Attorney General, to get in compliance with the IRS. And because they have a lot to lose, right? They don't want their business to be overly burdened or sanctioned or whatever inside the country, considering they have a lot of U.S. clients and they're based there. this just kind of makes sense. Number 4 on the list of 10, Stellar burns half the total supply. XLM price jumps 15% in minutes. Yep, this was announced at their conference in Mexico. I was actually going to go there, but I ended up in Pakistan. So there you go. But yeah, look, this is from, if I put my regulatory hat on, this is a bit scary, right? Because that's a big manipulation of supply. But at the same time, I think it was probably a good move for them in terms of PR. Obviously, price jumps are one thing. I haven't really checked to see if the price stabilized back down. I assume it probably has, because these type of news events usually aren't maintained. So you get a move after the news, and then eventually you retrace. But having said that, I think they have competition. They obviously are competing. One of their main competitors is Ripple. Ripple obviously has huge, lists and lists and lists of URLs where there's bad press about them because of the fact that they have this almost unlimited supply. So I think Stellar, this might have been a little rip at XRP. But we'll see how it pans out. I do think that in this right now, when regulators are looking more and more at trying to see where they can sink their teeth, something like this might be juicy to them. So we'll have to see if there's any regulatory blowback on Stellar for this. Number 5 on the list of 10, global crypto framework needed to stop regulatory arbitrage. Watchdog warns. Yeah. Look, a global regulatory framework, forget about crypto, is needed, has been needed for a long, long time. It's not that easy to accomplish. I think eventually we get there, but it will not be because of crypto. We already have organizations like FATF. We have other organizations that are global that try to create frameworks. It can be very difficult to have a framework that works in countries where the economies are so distinct. So you can have frameworks that may work in France that aren't going to work in Seychelles. And you can have things that work in Seychelles that probably aren't going to work in Australia. And that's mainly because, well, again, economies are different. The way the economies are run are different. The gatekeepers and who actually, where people actually get onboarded into the financial infrastructure is different. So at the end of the day, this is probably something, I don't know if I'll see this in my lifetime. I do think we're going to end up seeing things like prospectus law globally probably come to a head where we see some type of, let's say, melding together, where we see laws that are very, very similar, if not the same. But when it comes to generally in crypto, I think, people like to put crypto in its own little box, like somehow crypto is different from every single financial service that exists in human, in our human world. That's a bit ridiculous, because what does crypto have? It has tradable assets. It has ways to make payments. It has ways, let's say, to do banking, maybe, quote unquote. There's now lending products. There's every product we already have just based on some type of crypto asset. So it's not about creating a global crypto framework. It's about creating a global financial framework, which we've been trying to do. Now, when I say we, I mean collectively the world has been trying to do for a long time. Even the EU has tried to do directives inside the EU and has failed, right? We talk about, AMLD5 and the 5th money laundering directive and all these things all the time, but many countries haven't even adopted the 4th. We talk about MiFID 2 all the time. Many countries aren't even MiFID 2 compliant yet. It's been out for 12 years. Right? That's a unified, union of countries that generally have the same laws, and they still can't get it right. So anyway, let's go back to last week now. This is I guess we'll go 1 on a list of 5 as well. So 1 on a list of 5. Number 1, Bakkt opens Bitcoin custody to all institutions. Futures on track for new all-time high. Okay, so Bakkt, great. Look, this was such a big buzzword. Bakkt was, every time someone said Bakkt, Bitcoin, jumped 10%, and then it launched, nothing happened, and people were, oh well, what happened? Is it already priced in? Is it all? No, it's simply that the appetite actually for what is futures in this market is actually, well, not all that large. Well, it's not that it's not large. Let me put it this way. The reason Bakkt is different, obviously, is because it's physically settled, right? It's settled in Bitcoin. It's not cash settled. It's not settled in cash. And Bitcoin traders thought that was going to be a big deal. They didn't realize is that institutional guys could care less because they're in there to make money. They're not in there because they think holding your own Bitcoins in a hardware wallet in your grandmother's basement inside of a safe behind a firewall is a cool thing to do. They're in it because they just want to make the money on a volatile asset. So they don't care if it's cash settled. So I think that, BACT is going to continue to do their thing, and that's great. It offers the ability for not only institutional but also non-institutional players to get access to the market, and that's great. And they're one option, right, out of several options that exist. Major one being the CME, even though it's cash settled, and there will be more options over time. So I think the future is being on track for an all-time. Yeah, well, their volume is going to go up. Obviously, they're going to hit a lot of all-time highs, right? It's not that spectacular yet, but they're going to hit all-time highs many, many times until they start to see a more mature market. Number two, sorry, on a list of 5 here for this week. Michael Novogratz warns China digital currency revolution might undermine U.S. reserve status. I like Michael. Never had a chance yet to have a chat with him, but I saw him at a few events. I've heard him speak a few times. I generally think we're on the same wavelength on most topics. A few things we may disagree with, but I think if we had a conversation, it would probably be a good one. But here, I think, look, China has this myth around it, right? Everybody bows down to China, right? China's economy. China's going to outpace the U.S. China's going to take over as the reserve currency. China, whatever, blah, 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 China, 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 China. I think what people fail to realize is that a lot of the Chinese economy is on, stilts. It's fake, right? China pumps a lot of money into their GDP through, if you look at the U.S., where's the GDP come from in the U.S.? I'm going to go way over a minute on each one of these, but whatever. Where does the GDP come in the U.S. for the most part? Houses, right? One of the biggest influxes into the U.S. economy is houses. You know why? Well, first of all, there's home builders, right? You have people that build the houses. You have people that have to go and then actually sell the houses. You have people that buy the houses. Then you have people that come in and refurbish houses. Then you have people that sell furniture for those houses. Then you have people that sell internet and the water companies and the gas companies and all the energy companies that provide energy into the housing market is what drives the vast majority of the U.S. internal economy. And it's the same thing in any market where there's an emerging or existing middle class. Chinese middle class is expanding by leaps and bounds. So the biggest place that their economy is growing right now is in housing, right? But you have to understand that China builds cities literally where nobody lives to basically inflate their GDP. So their currency, look, they have a revolution on blockchain. They don't yet have a revolution on digital currency. I think they're going there for sure. Obviously, they've announced they're going to put the PBOC or whatever on the blockchain. They're going to put a currency on the blockchain. That's great, but what does that really mean, right? What does that really mean? Is that automatically going to lift restrictions on moving that currency out of the country? Is somehow this going to mean that some guy sitting in Canada is now going to go buy his gallon of milk using Chinese digital currency and not the Canadian dollar? Of course not. That's ridiculous. The currencies are already digitalized, guys. We've had digital currency for 20, 30 years. What we haven't had yet is decentralized currency. We've dematerialized currency a long time ago. I think the threat from China, look, empires change. Eventually, the US and dollar will not be the major player in the economy. Is that going to be because of Bitcoin and the Chinese yuan on the blockchain? No, it's not. That process started 40 years ago, and it's still ongoing. We haven't yet got to a peak where it actually changes hands. It will. Will it be China? Who knows? It could just as easily be India, right? It could just as easily be a small country. The U.S. has held that position for a long time, and it probably will continue to hold it. I don't think the U.S. reserve status gets unpinned. I've heard this. Again, this is a long answer. Sorry about this, but I've heard this conversation for 20 years. And first it was, the gas reserves in Russia, right? Natural gas reserves. Russia's going to become the dominant player in the world economy, and people are going to be using rubles to buy their oil. Well, that didn't happen. Then I heard that. Then you know what happened? Then after Russia became, then it's China, and then China's going to start to pay for oil in Europe. Yeah. So what? What you have to understand is all the old school economy, all the old school commodities are all priced in dollars. Doesn't matter how you pay for it. It's priced in USD, always. When it gets reflected in the market, it's reflected in USD. Anyway, I could talk about this forever. But I don't agree with him here, though I do think that the fact that China will be one of the first major countries in the world, not the first major country in the world, to utilize this technology to make settlements faster internally and then eventually externally of their country will give them an additional lead in some aspects. That's for sure. Number 3, I guess, on the list of 5, Kraken CEO. Bitcoin bulls constantly exhaust Kraken liquidities pool. Okay, so I guess Kraken needs some more liquidity. Anybody out there want to help them out? Yeah, I don't even know what's okay. So he's basically saying that they have an illiquid pool, that they do not have enough people selling to support the people buying. I hate to say it, but that's how a market works, right? I mean, you need to have an imbalance or the market doesn't move, right? Now, if that imbalance gets too wide, we've talked about this on the show before as well. Normally, when you see a move in a market, like even if it's a 20% move in one direction, let's say it's a 20% up move, and you look at your buy and sell book, you're probably going to have in a mature market probably something like 53% buyers, 47% sellers, maybe 54% buyers. You're never going to see like 80% buyers and 20% sellers, because it doesn't work that way. How does that market even move then? If only 20% are selling and 80% are buying, eventually the buyers eat up all the supply, the market stops moving, it stagnates. Then you know what happens? The buyers get nervous because the market's not moving in their direction anymore, and they sell back into the book and balance the book. So yeah, I don't know what else to comment on that story. Number 4 on a list of 5 for this week, CoinMarketCap targets crypto market without manipulation. Without manipulation. Yeah, look, I guess most people out here know of our dealings with CoinMarketCap. And I could throw a rant out there about CoinMarketCap, but I'm not going to. But they've done nothing up to this point that will have any minor effect on manipulation. Nothing. Not one iota of a difference, because the metrics they follow have no correlation to manipulation. So hopefully they come out with some new metrics. Eventually, you know what clears up manipulation? A larger market. When the market's so large that you need so much money to be able to manipulate it, and it's so interconnected via interconnected parties that there's no other way outside of having a massive amount of money to manipulate it, manipulation pretty much stops. That's it. Number 5 on the list of 5 from this week, Crypto.com launches new exchange, eyes top 10 spot within 5 years. Clap, clap, clap for Crypto.com. Welcome to the game, my friends. So they're eyeing the top 10 spot within 5 years. Obviously, they're well funded, right? So if the funny thing about that comment is it's kind of realistic. Whereas if it was, cryptoiscool.com, who just launched their company after buying a domain for $7.99, they'd probably say they were looking for the top 10 spot within 5 months. So at least this is realistic, and they probably have the money in the bank to support operations for 5 years. So we'll see what happens in 5 years. I don't think it would be too hard for them to get to the top 5 spot in 5 years. Why? Because the amount of competition that's going to exist in 5 years outside of major financial institutions that start to delve in crypto will be close to zero. It's basically going to be CoinMetro and like 4 or 5 other guys. And so why not? They'll probably be there as well. So hats off to Crypto.com. Good luck, guys. All right. So Kevin explains crypto. Let's do this real quick. Angel investor is this week's Kevin explains crypto phrase or term. I like this one. So angel investor. So everybody knows what investor means, I guess, right? Somebody who takes their money, gives it to somebody else with the hopes and dreams that that other person's idea comes to fruition, and everybody becomes filthy rich and lives on islands with yachts and has their own casino and bowling alley. Angel investor. So what's the difference between an angel investor and any investor? Well, an angel investor is usually a wealthy person or a group of people that put their money together that invest normally in startups, and they usually come in at seed phase. An angel investor, because they're called an angels, because they come in right at the right time, right? The company's just starting out, they need money, or they're still in a phase where they haven't really seen any growth, they're looking to expand, et cetera. And the angel comes in and saves the day. Compare that to like a VC, and these angel investors use their own money. VC investors use other people's money, and they generally have an ulterior motive of taking over more control of that business as time goes by. So angel investors are the guys you want in any company. That's the first guys you look for to invest in your idea, because they're the guys that share your vision, they see your passion, and they give you the money because they believe you will succeed. And that's an angel investor. Okay, so let's jump into Ask Me Anything here after that long news explanatory session. Okay. Yeah. Me and my side comments. Well, look, I don't. I don't know about motivational speaker. Never done it. Don't think I would do it as a profession. Um, but yeah, look, big news. Look, everybody has a different definition of big news. You know what the big news would be for me when I come in here, guys, and I say, look, forget the news this week, forget this. Documents are signed, money's in the bank, done, and I put like a party hat on. That'd be the big news. We're getting there, and I think next week we might even have that news. But yeah, look, I think most of the people that are in this, that are at least live with us here, obviously other people watch the show afterward, right? After it's live, but when it's live, it's small little family, right? So I try to treat it that way. Anyhow, congrats, well done. When is ink on paper and certain cash flow? Next week is what we're targeting. So next week. Market makers online before the end of the month. Abe Jorn, well, ink on paper, market makers are rolling in. So it is very possible. And I'd love to see that happen. So I think India is the next great power, especially if you look at demographics. Yeah, look, the expanding middle class, even Pakistan now has an expanding middle class. And there's so much potential in that country. It's mind-boggling because there's very little infrastructure. But yeah, look, there's so many. Being a world power, look, it used to be that being a world power and being the economical power were one and the same. Might not be true anymore. That might not be true. It used to be, you had that your military kind of backed up your currency. Even when they were backed by gold, your military was one of the major reasons that your currency held value. Because, well, if something happened, you're able to kind of back yourself up. I think that's going to change. And I think it's going to change based on lots of different factors. So I think even smaller countries have a chance to garner a much bigger stake in terms of economic prowess around the world. So I'll show Bjorn's comment here since they blocked it out. But yeah, China really fucked themselves over the long term by their one-child policy. Yeah, well, I guess at the time that policy. I mean, when you have a population that's growing so fast, you can't feed the people. You got to make that odd decision. I guess there was other decisions that could be made, but that's the one they made. Now they got to live with it, right? India can't even use the loo. Yeah, well, you'd be surprised how many countries have a lack of toilets. India is definitely one of them, that's for sure. But anyway, look, it's that doesn't mean much when it comes to their ability to grab a big piece of the economic pie in the world when they have such a large population, an emerging middle class, and the internet has allowed them. I don't know what the percentage of Indians are freelancers. I know Pakistan, I heard numbers, 220 million people, guys, 110 million, or 65% of those are under the age of 35. So they have a huge young population. There's over 4 million Pakistanis freelancing on Fiverr alone. 4 million. That's 2% of the population. That's amazing. Without that much internet, smartphone usage there is some of the lowest in the world. The coverage is terrible. And without even having these kind of what I would consider now in 2019 almost a basic necessity, 2% of the population and probably 4 to 5% of the adult population is working online as freelancers. That's amazing. That means that they can pull in money from outside the country and boost their internal economy. That's something that you couldn't really do during the Industrial Revolution, when the USD came to power. So, will you still need to sell XCM once the 2 million get into your account? Well, hopefully not. The plan would be no, that we don't at all. Obviously, we want to hold on to that XCM, just like anybody who buys it probably does. If time permits, could you repeat news about funding for those who didn't see the start? Sure, Daniel, I can repeat it. So I was a bit late today to the AMA, and that's mainly because I was on a chat with a group of investors that were finalizing agreements back and forth. And essentially, I'm waiting on an email that should flow in at some point here before I finish this AMA. And that email will be some of the KYC data that I've been waiting on from some of those investors. And that moves us forward to signing agreements. And back and forth today, we set a timeline for next week to have funds start to roll in. Most of the funds should come in by the end of next week. So good news there for sure. Obviously, it's all good news until ink hits paper and money hits the account. Then it's great news. So good news all around so far. Yeah, Crispy, it is. It is a Louis Vuitton scarf fan. Binance announced they will add. It was a gift, by the way, for Father's Day. So Binance announced they will add 180 fiat for trading. What do you think? Well, for trading. So I told you, it doesn't just adding a pair saying, okay, Turkish lira versus Bitcoin. You can now. So what? I mean, at the end of the day, they still can't accept Turkish lira. They still can't accept these currencies. They're simply pricing in them. And while that may make it easier for certain individuals in those countries to understand the prices that they're paying for the underlying current crypto asset, it's not a big deal at all. And it's not even a big deal from the tech standpoint, right? All you're doing is connecting to a quote feed from an FX source, and you're simply checking, okay, how many Turkish lira equal $1? Okay, add that multiplier to the Turkish lira price. I mean, again, it's not big news. Now, if they were accepting 180 fiat currencies as deposit methods, that would be much bigger news. In a few years, when hopefully CM is a powerhouse crypto bank, do you think you'd keep your HQ in talent? We definitely still have a presence here. That's for sure. I don't see a reason not to have a presence here, even if it's just from a structuring standpoint, given the way tax works here in Estonia, and it's in the EU, so not much of a reason to look at another place in the EU, unless there's specific local legislation that happens and there's a stall on getting national regulation or EU-wide regulation, EU-wide directive. But definitely we would have other offices. Would I still be in talent is another question, because obviously once we start to move into other markets, I may be tasked to go to those other markets to get those markets off the ground, though I may not. So I don't know, to be honest. I do think that the Estonian office would remain. Would it remain our global HQ? That remains to be seen. I do think it'll play a role, though, for sure, because this is where we started, and I wouldn't envision leaving. Tram news from Daniel. Hey, Daniel, look, aside from Pakistan and business development going on there, fundraising, I haven't really been dug in too much, though I have seen, actually I'm going to check right now as I'm sitting here, because I was seeing some news on Tram back and forth. We're close. We're very close in terms of I think mainly what we're digging into now is more about design. I'm going to look at the last testing notes here. Yeah, there's a few testing notes about some small changes to the UX, the user experience, when using the margin platform. And there's a few small bugs here and there from withdrawing funds in trams. And then I think some history reports coming out of the trams. But I tend to think those are going to be solved probably over this weekend and early into next week. Salvatore, who's our CTO, everyone here probably knows, is traveling. He's still working, but he's traveling. So there might be, usually on the weekend, he gets a lot of stuff done. That's his time that he can kind of compress and really move things along. But I think we're probably, I think before the end of the month, we're going to see Tram launch, at least in some way, shape, or form. That doesn't mean 100% launch in terms of all functionalities, or we're definitely going to see some interactivity. You guys are going to get a view of Tram, I think, before the end of the month. That's for sure. Debit cards. So actually was talking to, over the past few weeks, to the company, the liquidity provider on the FX Pig side that we're working with to get this done. He promised to put me in touch with 2 or 3 guys on his team that are now tasked with getting this over the hump, because it's been stuck for a few reasons, because of banking APIs, intermediate APIs, et cetera. And next week, I'm going to get in touch with those guys. So it's moving. It's just moving out of our hands, meaning that it's moving, but it hasn't yet got to the point where I can take control of it and get it to you guys. So there's still things needs to happen on the other side. before I can do that. But it is moving. There is progress there. Do you think the Brazilian investors will come around now that they've gotten some money from those other investors? It's possible. It's definitely possible. Look, usually when you do fundraising, nobody wants to be the first guy. So they wait. And when they see somebody else comes in, they assume, it's this assumption that, oh, well, these guys obviously did their homework. And if they think it's good, then, I already thought it was good, but I have, no, it must be good. Same thing, I guess, if you're sitting around a table and somebody brings food out to the table nobody's ever seen before in their lives, you don't want to be the first guy to eat that food. It might smell good, it might even look good, but you've never seen it before. You're waiting. First guy digs in, smile on his face, everybody's in. So yeah, it's possible. It's possible. If funding doesn't come in, how long until CM is out of cash? It's month to month, like it's always been. So I don't have the exact figure on that right now, but you're probably looking at 30 to 60 days. But in those 30 or 60 days, we would simply bring in more cash and then be constantly, for the past year, it's been pretty much 30, 60, maybe 90 days max at any given point where we had funds on deposit. So I wouldn't expect that to change. What did the investors receive in exchange, pun intended, for their $2 million? Well, they received equity based on our valuation. And that's it. They also have some of the money going to XCM, but that's they're buying XCM. They will be buying XCM. But outside of that, they got what any investor would get when they invest in a company: equity. How is the CSD moving along? CSD is moving along well. I was in Riga yesterday. Was it yesterday? Yeah. I had a meeting with the project lead. Everything's going according to plan. I think they're about maybe 1 week behind the 4-month schedule, mainly because we had a few changes that need to be made in terms of how reporting needs to happen based on underlying regulation for the CSD. But everything's going along well. They're now through, I think, their second stage, now into stage 3 of 5. And the third stage now will start to bring in the tokenization element, as well as custody and things like that. So some big pieces coming up in this next sprint that they're working on. Once the money hits your accounts, will we see a big marketing push? Not right away, no. But yes, of course, marketing. Look, the goal of this money, and I'll repeat this, is self-sustainability. That means the goal is to get our revenues to the point where we are self-sustainable. That means there will be a major focus on marketing. We still have, I think, a small bit of fine tuning we need to do before we start that marketing push. And we also need to test marketing, and tests have to be done on low budgets. I'm not going to test on a $50,000 marketing project or 100 or whatever to find out it didn't work. So there's a process, and I think we're going to give ourselves 2 to 3 months to work our way hiring, the process of creating that and testing marketing and testing copy and testing where we're going to market to find the sweet spot where the ROI is so that we know where to push those marketing euros. And in that same time, fine tune a few of our products. Mobile needs to be fine tuned for sure. I think there's a few things we need to do in terms of simplifying the simple pieces of the exchange. And dashboard. There's a few things that we need to take care of inside of those 2 or 3 months, and then that's when you're going to see the more aggressive push. But it has to be done smart, guys. It has to be done smart. We can't just spend $300K on a marketing campaign because we have money. We need to do it correctly. Parsec launch. Parsec's I think scheduled to go to be in trade before the end of the month. When is Oliver going to join the AMA? I don't know. Every time I'm in the office, Oliver seems he's not. And every time he's in the office, I see him, I'm not here. So I think he's floating around somewhere in Malta right now on a pool raft or something, drinking a pina colada. But one of these days, any minute now, that's when he should arrive. So when funds kick in, will we see some big promotion of CM? I think a few AMAs ago, you said it would take 60 days from the day you get the money. Yep, like I just said, 60 to 90 days. Any news on MAP? That's Oliver's pet project. So again, I'm leaving that all on Oliver. On margin posting, our full kind of dev team has been focused on Tram, getting that thing up and running. After that's done, and that not just Tram, but Tram and XCM Utility, et cetera. Once those are done, margin posting is the next venture. And some work has already been done there, both on the GUI side and on the programming side. So if I remember correctly, that was a 4-week project, I think. And I think 1 week might already be done. I could be wrong, but it was definitely, it was less intensive than Tram, that's for sure, in terms of getting it off the ground. Are you willing to share any details about the marketing plan after the money is in? Yeah, some details, sure. Look, it's like having a war plan. You know, if we tell the enemy where we're going, then they're just going to go there first. So I don't want to we won't release, exact details of what we're going to do. But sure, yes. I guess the answer to that is yes. What exactly are you going to do with the funding? The way is it going to split overall? That's something that's a board decision. Six, my bad, and that's something that we're going to be discussing probably first week of December, second week of December. Definitely there's going to be a chunk that goes to marketing. We do have to hire some more people. We already have a burn rate that's going to increase. So in those 2 or 3 months too, it's about reducing the current burn so that when we add on additional funding where we can, so when we add on additional, sorry, not funding, but when we add on additional costs, that we still maintain a controllable burn rate, controllable amount of money we're spending every month. But the vast majority is going to be focused on operations, increasing operations, meaning devs, meaning compliance, meaning support, as well as marketing. But marketing will be the biggest push, that's for sure. Headhunt for marketing. Well, headhunt for marketing has been ongoing, but we haven't focused so much time on it. Once we finalize this fundraising next week, then that's going to be part of that board meeting is going to be strategy for hiring, who we're hiring, how we're hiring, and how we're going to go about it. We've been going about it in certain ways, based on limited budget, but now we'll have a bit of money to, part of marketing is hiring. So we can spend a bit more money on that and really find a candidate that we're happy with. Any updates regarding using Chainlink and Quant for the CSD? No updates on that. We postponed a bit those talks only because I was traveling, and then one of the guys on the dev team was sick. He's just now kind of getting around to not being sick. So those talks probably will happen over the next couple of weeks. I do think, again, there's definitely overlap. So it just depends on what they're working on, what we're working on, and exactly how we can collaborate. But I have a few ideas. Regarding the equity the investor received, how much did you give them? The valuation, guys, is 50 million, so you can do the math. Will there be a floor on Parsec price when it's tradable? That hasn't been a discussion that I've been involved in, so can't really give you an answer on that one. Yeah, it depends on, it's a tricky subject, I guess, because it's not our own token. So it's not something we definitely can't dictate how that token is going to be traded. Though we can have a say in it. They can ask, and we can say yes or no. Up to this point, as far as I know, they haven't asked. So it's not something that's up for debate. Do you work on something special that will improve CM or add new features? Map was something that no one was expecting, and it was a surprise. That's why I'm asking. There's always talks. So we have a lot of smart people in CoinMetro, and we talk about a lot of things all the time. So there's always talks, and sometimes some things stick, right? Sometimes they don't. So map is one of those things that kind of stuck. And there are other things that stick. There's other things that, back and forth we discuss. So there's always something, that's for sure. There's always something. Right now, off the top of my head, I can't give you any juicy tidbits on what some of those things are, but there's always something. We're always looking at different ways that we can look. There's one thing about creating new products in an ecosystem that costs money, it takes time, but it can also be great. There's all things about taking products you already have and fine tuning them to create auxiliary products that actually work off most of the same, let's say, build. So you don't have to spend significant amount more money, but you're able to generate much more profits. So, those things, those are something that we're always talking about, as well as, look, how can we do this? How can we increase leverage? How can we offer products? How can we offer these more exotic products? Do we need regulation? All those things are constantly talked about in the office. And over time, you're going to start to see more and more of these things. But right now, definitely MAP is the one that's kind of that one side project that's being more focused on. Do you actually think funding will come in this time? You did announce it already multiple times. Yes, I do. Look, a lot of times, look, I've with the Brazilians, I was fairly, well, they signed an MOU, right? To be honest, after that MOU was signed, and it was signed kind of without, it seemed that they didn't pay much attention to it, but they signed it. And then in subsequent calls, it became obvious that it might be a bit difficult. But look, it's one thing. Look, in life, you can either be negative or positive, right? Or I guess you could be neutral too. I tend to try to be positive about things, but yes, I honestly believe that we're next week. We'll have signature on paper, and we'll be moving on. And that's mainly because the process behind this was much different than the Brazilians. It was a much different process. It was a process that went through not me initially, but other people in the organization. There was a lot of questions back and forth, a lot of good questions back and forth. These guys understand what they're doing, what they're getting into. They know that what their goals are. We've had discussions about their goals, our goals, how we plan to get there, good and bad. So it's been a much different process up to this point. You were looking for an extra employee for the marketing? Did you find him yet? No, we haven't found him yet, or her. But mainly, look, we were obviously not spending all that much money on recruiting, so we were trying to find using certain methods. Now, once funding is closed, we'll have a bit more options, and we will find somebody. There are people out there that are really talented and would love to work at this type of company. But to find them, sometimes you actually have to spend a bit of money. So having more money for that marketing budget, and I mean marketing for employees as well, will definitely help us find somebody. This funding, Bjorn, won't be used specifically for licensing because unfortunately, it's not enough. So that's why I said the goal for this fundraising. Now, the goal for the fundraising is self-sustainability. Once we get even within 50% of self-sustainability, to be honest, even 30% of self-sustainability, and we show improvements month on month, it's very easy to get funding. It's very easy to get debt funding. It's very easy to get convertible debt. There are companies like Fuse 3 in the UK, for example, that would easily come, and we could easily probably get 3, 4, 5 million without too much of an issue as we get closer to self-sustainability. So the goal with this fundraising, with this round, self-sustainability, and then we go after more funds, which would be much easier to acquire, even from a debt perspective, where we use those to go into expansion as well as licensing. So it may be possible, that's in terms of MTF licensing, which is the biggie. When you talk now, Montenegro is another thing. Montenegro may be possible, that's for sure. But in terms of EU licensing, this round isn't going to cover it. EMI licensing, perhaps, but it would lock up capital that we may need to get to our goal. So it all depends on how we progress in that self-sustainable goal. That goal of being self-sustainable, I guess. Well, we do have some Reddit questions. I'll jump on those. Let's see. There were 2. So how many use cases will XCM have? This is from K Savage 79 on Reddit. I don't know, actually. We're working on right now, I think maybe 4 or 5. But every product we launch, we will attempt. The goal is to tie in a use case. So I would hope at some point in the future there are dozens of use cases. Though I think just having 3 to 5 strong use cases is enough in terms of tokenomics. But that's only going to grow over time. How will CoinMetro protect their users' accounts or debit cards if they're compromised? Will red flag go up in text message? When it comes to debit cards, you get the same protections you get from any debit card because MasterCard, Visa, whoever underpins that card is the one who provides the majority of the protection. So yeah, you'd be able to set up alerts. They will actually be monitoring, and if they see something odd, they would actually decline charges, et cetera, just like they would on any debit card. And in some instances, debit card purchases can be protected, but that would actually come from our side. That would require an insurance on our side that usually is going to require some type of licensing to be able to issue for someone to issue to us. But yes, there will be alerts and things like that. When it comes to accounts on CoinMetro, we do everything we can, and we will continue to do more to make sure that it's people can't get access to your account. And the fact that we manually review withdrawals and things like that helps. Trust me, we've caught a few things already, even with the relatively small client base we have. We've already caught instances. So, we have internal policies and protocols that we use that we can't really discuss openly so much, because then the bad people would know what we're doing, right? The guys who want to actually steal your money would know what we do and try to skirt it. So we have a lot of things that we do, both automated and not automated. When it comes to debit cards and external payment services, you would be offered the same type of security you're offered on any type of debit card or external payment service. Will there be staking? There may be at some point in the future. Right now, most of our assets sit with BitGo. BitGo started to do staking, but they do it on assets so far that we don't have listed. If they start to stake assets we do have listed, then yes, we wouldn't hold those staking rewards for ourselves. So, and from AAWWZZ, can you explain Chainlink and what separates it from other coins and why it has been such a strong mover in the sideways market? Do you think the rise is sustainable? Are there any other cryptos that are on your radar right now as ones that fulfill a real function and solve a real problem? I'm also interested in your take on MKR. What is it and why has it remained so relatively strong despite such low volumes? Okay, so all right, Chainlink. So, well, what separates it? Look, in a market full of hype, and Chainlink is at its own bit of hype, but in a market that's generally almost all hype, Chainlink has actually built a product that can help in the adoption of blockchain technology into already existing infrastructures. So basically what Chainlink does is that they have they basically link up oracles to the blockchain. What an oracle is simply a source of data. So let's say your company has some old Oracle database that they use to store some type of data, right? Let's say data on products that you sell. And you start to use the blockchain for supply chain, for your supply chain. I mean, you track your supply chain, you track how your products move from warehouse A to warehouse B on the blockchain. But you need to get the information from that old database onto the blockchain, or that information can affect how the information on the blockchain is kind of, or how those informations work together. Meaning something happens outside of the chain can affect how the chain reacts. So the oracle, basically, an oracle is installed inside of that old database. That oracle communicates via an API and converts that data into on-chain data, so that data can be incorporated with data on this new technology. So it allows companies that have existing infrastructures, or companies that build right from the blockchain but need to communicate with, let's say, antiquated infrastructure. So it's something that I have to say, like most businesses that have lots of success, the initial idea is rather benign. It's something that every programmer probably already was doing or had already done to a certain extent. Any programmer that came on to blockchain and said, "Oh, I have a bunch of information that sits in this old JavaScript. How do I get it on chain? Oh, I guess I got to create some little program that communicates from the chain to the." Yeah, well, but Chainlink took it and made a business out of it, and they've done quite well. Now they have companies like Google and other large enterprises that are trying to work together with them. So that's why they've been such a strong mover, because they've been constantly having real use cases. And there actually is many, many real use cases that can be applied to their product. I think the rise, look, no rise is sustainable. Well, is the rise sustainable? Depends on what you mean. If you look at the world stock markets, they always are on the rise. Obviously, they have times where they dip and da-da-da-da. But if you look at long-term, they're always on the rise. So is the rise sustainable? If the company continues to bring on, new large partners, and they continue to innovate, and the big one, and no one comes out with a chain that can actually do this natively, that becomes a standard in any major industry, then yes, the rise is probably sustainable. This is not me telling you to buy Chainlink today, because tomorrow it could be lower than it is today, right? There still will be volatility. This is still an immature market. Any company that provides value can have a sustainable rise, and it can be sustained over time. But you always have to be leery of competition and changes in market. And in a technology-driven market, those changes can happen very fast. Do I have anything on my radar? Look, I don't, to be honest, while I started out my career in finance as a trader, And I really did enjoy trading, and I still enjoy, reading things and looking at charts every once in a while. I don't have an account right now with any tokens in it except for XCM. I don't speculate on tokens. I don't buy them. And I'm not saying that because I think it's a bad idea. It's just that my focus is on CoinMetro and CSD and making sure that those projects are a success. So I don't have the mental time to focus on other things. What I would say is I've talked to, just in talking and doing business development, things like Quant, for example, are providing real use cases. I mean, these guys are also working on settlement between central banks and Fed banks and things like that. These things are things that are actually needed by the market. So if you find something, just like when you buy stocks, you find something that the market actually needs. Again, there might not be 100% correlation between token price and the value of the company. But at the end of the day, people buy tokens based on hype. And if there is value there, hype will follow. And just want to talk about Maker, I guess. So Maker dies. So look, I think why has it been so strong despite low volumes? Maker has, I would say Maker is one of the more legitimate stable. Well, the DAI is one of the more stable. One of the more stable coins, I guess, out there. The way they structured it actually makes sense in many ways. Low volumes don't necessarily need to mean volatility. High volumes don't necessarily mean low volatility either. I think generally they don't. I think if they did, there's kind of like two sides of the coin here. If they were to do massive amounts of publicity and really start to push their name out there, they probably would see more volatility and they wouldn't stay so strong. I think they generally have a very, very tight-knit community, and that community is finding use cases and using Maker and Maker DAI for those use cases, and they're sustaining the market by themselves. So they've created a very tight-knit community that's large in some ways, small in others, depending on what you're comparing it to. And they're not focused on, becoming the guys that are talked about so much or the guys with the biggest amount of hype. They're simply focused on creating that community, and they've done quite well at it. Going back to the AMA here, let's see. How about LHV? I know that you were focusing on market makers, but do you get the green light to add any coin you want? Still don't have that from them. We're going to dig back into LHV probably, or I will dig back into LHV as soon as we get funding out of the way. And then I'll be pushing for that. We haven't gotten it yet, though. But, it's been a while. They definitely should have gotten some work done on it, though we haven't been pestering them. So maybe, sometimes the dog that barks the loudest gets fed first. So we're going to start barking again shortly. Thank you, Wannabe. Trust you, Kevin. I wish that things can move a little faster. Everybody wishes things can move faster. But, life is what life is. MTF license like 1 million alone. Yeah, it doesn't cost $1 million. You need 730,000 euro in minimum capital plus first year expenses. And the minimum you're going to get away with is roughly $1 million. That means that money needs to be locked down. Now, that money needs to be there on day one of the year. And if there's a spot audit, but generally speaking, it's got to be there once a year. But if you spend it and it's not there next year, you have some big problems. Would CoinMetro ever consider offering derivatives on its platform? There goes Pavel. I was expecting this question. It came in a bit late, but we would consider it. Yes, I would consider doing anything. Just depends on the circumstances, right? So I would say that obviously you can look at other platforms that offer derivatives and see how much volume these guys do. And, volume looks great. There are some regulatory issues there for sure, though there is a big gray area because in the EU, for example, a derivative, let's say a future in this case, is something that's cash settled or physically settled. Here, if you're settling in crypto that isn't considered to be a currency, and it's not physically, it's virtually settled. You can't take physical delivery. I think you're in a gray area. So it definitely requires some legal opinion, a strong one. And if that legal opinion existed, then yeah, I would consider it. How far down the road is integration with FXPig? Once, I think, as we get closer to self-sustainability, that becomes an easy thing to do. Thought about partnering with German Fido Bank that Kraken uses. Kraken CEO talks highly of them. We reached out to them at some time back in the day here and never got a response. Just because one crypto exchange uses a bank doesn't mean everybody can. We're the, aside from us, I think CoinFloor in the UK and Coinbase, who doesn't actively, I think, even use LHV that much. That's it at LHV. So, it could be, sometimes a bank will take on the risk of taking on a new client in a new industry like Kraken, but that's it. That's their entire risk appetite. They're not going to make a lot of money off of us. So they really have to like us to let us in the door, right? So anyway, we constantly have this banking topic on our table, and it's something we constantly look out for. And we constantly look for options. And that's definitely on the list. Though when we have tried to communicate with them so far, we haven't gotten a response back, or at least not an adequate one. You stated that you don't know which use cases XCM will have. What is the primary incentive to hold XCM at the moment? Well, you get discounts, holding discounts. There's already discounts built into the system for the amount of XCM you hold. So that'd be the main incentive right now to hold XCM, aside from a speculative incentive. Yeah, so there you go. Obviously, once TRAM comes out, that's another reason to hold it. In terms of margin trading, I think we even have discounts built in. I don't know if they've been activated yet, but discounts built in for the fee structure on margin trading as well. So one of your TG notes message, you mentioned CM may be involved in global remittance service. What corridors would you plan to target, and being a Ripple ODL partner part of that process? In my mind, Ripple wasn't part of it when I made the statement, no. Though it could be, but that wasn't remittance. Obviously, we target the corridors where more remittances happen than anywhere else in the world, and that's basically you're talking Asia, India, Middle East. Well, sorry, in Middle East, not the Middle East. Asia, meaning India, meaning Pakistan, Latin America, Mexico, down into Central and South America. Those are your two major thoroughfares for remittances. Also, UK back to Eastern Europe is another big remittance, and back into Pakistan, actually, and India. So, you target the 2-3 biggest because there's really no other reason to target anywhere else. Remittance is a natural business for the blockchain. Like if you built a platform, you build a dashboard that it has the ability to transfer funds instantaneously between two people cross-border, and then underpin that on top of crypto assets, but also have fiat on-ramps. You already have a remittance service. It's just about marketing it that way and creating a user experience that flows like a remittance service, and that's it. Any news on Cardano? Nope, no news on any listings really. Once we get through fundraising, I will focus back on LHV, one of my tasks. And we will look to get this self-assessment listing guide, and then we will basically start to actively list things that we feel will add value. Plus, we need to bring in market makers. So that combined with the market makers will give us a real incentive and the fuel to push more and more assets on the exchange. Do you know, Kevin, that a lot of people are worried about you when you went to Pakistan? I know that is because they are worried about their investment, but do you feel on your shoulders that you are carry all the company by yourself? Yeah, I realize that. Look, I think, most of the time, things you read or see are overblown, right? It's the risk of things happening in life is very minuscule when you live a certain type of life, right? I mean, if you're a drug dealer walking around with 15 guns in your waistband, then you're probably going to get shot. That's just the way life works. But getting kidnapped in Pakistan is you probably have the same probabilities of that happening as winning the lottery. So I don't know how many of you have won the lottery sitting in here. I've never won the lottery. Not that I play it really all that much either, but anytime I've ever played it, I've never won. But yeah, look, I do feel it. But I don't feel it when I travel to Pakistan. I feel it when I'm sitting here. I feel it when I'm sitting outside. I feel it when I'm at home. I feel it on a Sunday morning when I'm sitting in my house eating eggs. As a CEO of any company, normally a CEO, their first burden is to their shareholders. Now here, I have shareholders, but I also have token holders. So this new world of tokens means not only, and again, not 100% correlation between, let's say equity holders and token holders, but there is some type of correlation, right? So yes, I do feel it. I do feel it, and it's the reason why, one of the reasons why I continue to push forward, right? I'm not here just for me. If I was here just for me, my life would be a lot easier. But I'm not, right? So everybody has obligations, right? And to me, like I said, that's why this thing, these AMAs and all this, the way that I interact with you guys, the way that I interact on Telegram, the way that I interact here, we have these things back and forth. People are like, oh, you said this, you said that, because I'm just open with you guys, right? I'm open, and I'm open because I feel that I should be, because I feel an obligation towards you guys, because if you guys weren't here, we wouldn't be here. So that obligation means that I like to treat you like, adults in the room. I don't like to hide information and, only release things when we absolutely know, that's what you do to the public. I don't put on the website. Nobody, we're not putting banners on the website that say Tram will be out tomorrow, and then it's not. We communicate that here with you guys. And don't take that as me saying Tram's going to be out tomorrow, by the way, because I know somebody's probably going to throw that in Telegram now. The point is that, yeah, I feel the obligation, but that's one of the, that's something that I would say I enjoy. I think life without obligations is not really life. Trust me, I've lived a life with almost no obligations. Like literally, like most people have in their mind that the best thing that could possibly happen is they live on some hot beach somewhere in the Caribbean, and they have nothing to do all day and they have money in the bank. Well, I've done that, and it sucked. All right. So, everybody has different things that they like in life. I'm here because, I kind of like when the stress is on, and, you don't really know what's going to happen next, and you have to hunker down and figure things out, and you have to work with people to get things done. That's what I like to do. Have you looked into Hummingbird bot for market making? Hummingbot? No, I haven't. But what I will tell you is this, don't take this the wrong way. I've been around a lot of bots in trading, a lot. None of them work. So everybody can come back with all their nonsense now about how, I don't know, they know a guy who knows a guy who knows a guy who made 17 cents using Hummingbot. Or one time I connected it myself one time to Binance and made $33 in 60 minutes, whatever. At the end of the day, the more complex a market gets, the least possible, the least, the less probable you're going to see that. Look, if you have a bot that you created in your basement, on your supercomputer, or whatever you created, and it can actively trade within the spread of a volatile asset and make a return, what are you selling that thing for next to nothing or giving it away for free? You wouldn't. Now, you can be altruistic all you want, but trust me, the world would benefit a lot more if you made something that worked, made $1 quadrillion, and then donated it all to poor people, rather than giving out your code for free, right? So people give out code for free on a financial trading app because it doesn't work, right? That doesn't mean it can't work. Look, you can literally close your eyes and throw darts at a dartboard, one that says buy and sell, the other one that says Bitcoin, Litecoin, and follow that every day and make money. And then 95 people could do the same thing and lose all their money. Market making should happen based on sound market making principles. If you're just trading within the spread, the width of the spread, the direction of the spread does not dictate the direction of the market, and it never will. So I don't even see a reason to look at it. I don't even see a reason to look at the website, to be honest. Multi-sig on company accounts, I hope. Yep, 100% multi-sig on company accounts. Multi-sig, time-based signatures, time-based and multi-sig signatures. Yes. I'm not the only one with access. If I go to India and die of diarrhea or whatever, the company will still exist and there'll still be access to the funds. So don't worry about that. Standard, by the way, risk mitigation protocols, standard business operation protocols, standard disaster recovery protocols that any business should have, any business. Okay, guys, look, I think we're just about in an hour on the show. Well, it's just an hour and 14 minutes. Holy Christ, look at that. Overtime. I'm going to have to bill somebody. All right, guys. Look, as I say every week, thank you everybody for being here. I think it was a good AMA. We had some good questions in there. I think I went on a tangent a few times about macroeconomic nonsense, but I think it was good. Thanks everybody for coming. Thanks for the questions. Have a great weekend. Spend some time with friends and family. Buy some XCM. And see you guys on Telegram. Tag me if you have questions at Kevin Murcko, KevinMurcko. Same handle for Twitter, same handle for Instagram. Tag me wherever you want. And merch on the cards. Yeah, actually, we're waiting on one of the first official designs for the T-shirt of the month club. So yes, merch is on the way. Maybe it's not going to make it maybe this year for Christmas, but we're working on it. I think sometime early 2020 we're going to have something to show you guys. So it should be cool. Anyway, guys, like I said, have a great weekend. Thanks a lot, guys. Appreciate you all, and see you guys soon. Cheers.